Do I dare? Big topic. I'll see if I leave this up or not. But my hesitation is because anytime you venture into fields, you get flack from both. Whenever you try to go into a domestic squabble situation, cops know both will turn on them, right? And like Osho used to say, if you're speaking the truth, both sides will attack you. In the polarity duality game, I should link a video here about God doesn't take sides, source unity, the Tao. Allow the Tao is the t-shirt for today. Allow the Tao. The Tao doesn't take sides. The Tao is the way. It is the natural flow of non-judgment beyond good and evil, right? So if you venture into an arena where there's obvious side taking, where people are taking sides, whether it's in Democrats and blood publicans. It's an obvious one right now. This is late October 2018 in the United States. Or in religionism, of course, you get in the middle, and if you tell the truth, both sides will hate you because the domestic argument is that they like it. It's like, get out of here. We like fighting, right? There's something, or the fighting is teaching them, or they're addicted to the fight. They don't want it to be solved. It's like, people don't want it to be solved because they still want to be right. They want to get the ego satisfaction of being right. So with a bit of trepidation, a little hesitation, and we'll see if I leave it up or not, I'm going to enter into the UFO battlefield. Now, I've not been of the two camps. There's basically two camps in the UFO field. Now, I want to preempt it here, a little caveat of, I'm not a UFO researcher, just by default, because it's part of the larger awakening, the larger disclosure, the larger wake up on Earth at this time, because our star families, these are all my opinions, by the way, that's the caveat, choose wisely for yourself what resonates and doesn't. It's a huge part of waking up to free energy, to portal travel, to stargates, to the galactic family, Pleiadians, Arcturians, Andromedans, the Orions, the Dracos, the game from Lyra. So years and years ago, so there's two basic camps in the UFO field. It's always been. One good friend of mine is a former director of, one of the leaders of the largest MUFON chapter in America. I'm going to keep it impersonal, maybe. We'll see if I name names or not. Naming names, that's not right. And so I would always hear stories of behind the scenes between the major players, Dr. Greer, the Richard Dolans. These are all, and I love them all. I used to volunteered years ago to help film witnesses for Dr. Greer. He never took me up on it, but I said if anyone's in Arizona, I'd love to. I used to have a video company for his project Disclosure. Loved it. Went to some of his premieres in LA and so forth. And so, but a little bit involved with it, but it's not my main focus. My main focus is to help personal spiritual awakening, because I feel if we change the individual, more awakened people, therefore the t-shirts that say 1,000 awakened Buddhas, and this whole thing is over. If we get 1,000 humans who actually enter unity consciousness into full spectrum humanship, avatarhood, Christhood, if you will, then you can't control the planet. You can't control awake people. You can only control divided and conquered people who have had their cerebral hemispheres divided. We have a big rift in the middle of our brains, by the way. We have two hemispheres. Maybe in unity consciousness, there's some experiments when your corpus callosum, which is the bridge between the two hemispheres of the brain, when it doesn't work, people develop incredible talents, able to memorize everything and so forth. These are little hints. They're usually considered weird brain conditions at this point. But maybe some of our star family have developed unity consciousness. And that's beyond the divided and conquered polarity Hegelian dialectic state currently on Earth. Now, this also shows up, obviously, in politics, or male versus female, the battle of the sexes, or our country versus your country. In America, it's so obvious.
Ford versus Chevy, Coke versus Pepsi, my high school against yours. Kill 'em, 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we annihilate?
You know, we're programmed from birth to be in battle mode, fighting against. Nothing wrong with that, except many of us now are getting tired of it. We've blown up planets. You know, the asteroid belt is Maldek, an old planet that we blew up. Traveled to Mars. We ripped the atmosphere off Mars. We destroyed it basically. Came to Atlantis. All through time, Stargate jumping things. About 5 million years ago, I think. I think Atlantis is older than what people think. It's anyhow because time also works differently. There's a lot here, but I'm going to try to stay on topic. So currently in the UFO field, there's for the secret space program. So in the UFO field, the way that divided and conquered thing shows up is you have nuts and bolts people, and you have experiencers. And throughout the history of the UFO field, you know, the last 20, 30, 40 years, that nuts and bolts people are like, we want to find the aluminum bismuth lattice, crystal lattice that can't be, you know, we can't currently make on human because it can channel and direct energy and so forth, right? Electromagnetic, right? True. All this is true. So the nuts and bolts people want to create fancy flying anti-gravitic propulsion devices, right? And they want to play with that through what they feel is rationalism, and I call it scientism. And I'm not totally ignorant to it. My dad was a nuclear physicist, and not just the PhD type. He actually did it. He wrote the computer program that ran all the nuclear reactors on the planet. They wrote it. Him and a colleague in Sweden, the Westinghouse got a hold. They licensed it. The Chinese and Russians stole it, and so forth. And my dad worked for a small engineering company. He was a whistleblower in Sweden when they were going to put in a certain type of reactor, which is the Chernobyl and Fukushima, the ones that have gone bad. My dad stood up as a 27-year-old and testified or a 30-year-old. How old was he when we moved to America? 32 maybe. So a very young man. And my mom never told me this. He testified in front of the equivalent of Congress or the Parliament in Sweden. So basically, this thing's not going to work. And they did huge contracts, billions of dollars, all that. And they had to scrap it. Well, he became persona non grata. So I watched my dad on the inside, being willing to do that, to speak up inside that industry and all the reactors around the world. Now we have nuclear power is such a hot topic, but he then came over and worked for a small company in America called Combustion Engineering that ran reactors around the world, and basically because of him and his department, right? And perfect safety record, so forth. Ran the giant one here in Palo Verde outside of Phoenix, Arizona. But he came up with a program that worked with inserting the graphite rods into the actual pile of the uranium so it wouldn't fucking melt down and irradiate the shit out of the countryside, right? So I saw that from the inside. We grew up, we'd go sailing with his brainhead friends. I'd sit and listen in the conversations and so forth. So I almost went down that path. But I remember going to the physics department in the university and bringing them a book called, and it's when I spiritually started awakening, and I brought them a book called The Tao of Physics by Fritjof Capra, a Stanford associate professor, I think he was. And I thought, well, sure, they'd be impressed with this at the university. It was like kryptonite to them, and I realized they're not open-minded. These rationalist scientists, mentalists, are scared. It's the old Galilean thing, the church versus science, right? It's still reverberating through time 500 years later. So in the UFO field, the way that shows up, and I went off into become a medical doctor. I said, well, I'll do that. And I realized I don't even want to do that. That's too tight. The human genome experiment was going on, a research experiment at the time when I was going to this university. And I ended up going to business school, getting a master's in business, because I thought if we can all trade with each other, we won't want to blow each other up. If I have lunch with, dinner with a Korean family, we won't want to blow each other up, right? Or the Chinese. So I thought of it that way. And then I had my spiritual awakening start happening at that same time. Major Kundalini experiences, went to India, met several teachers. I saw huge miracles, things I could not deny. My scientific mind couldn't deny. But I grew up in a total scientific, atheistic Swedish household. And that's whatever. And so this Hegelian dialectic occurs in the UFO field as well. The nuts and bolts people versus the experiencers. Those that are experiencing strange other dimensional, floating through walls, being taken on ships, things like this. So the story of the children village, the village of the village children in Zimbabwe, that a ship lands during recess, you know. Professor John Mack goes to talk to them. You know, he was since killed in an accident in London. He was working with Bud Hopkins. You know, they're the ones that would hypnotize people, experiencers, to have them talk about, recall their shielded, their blanked out memories, their screen memories. So I've seen it through the years. And then when Whitley Strieber came out with his book, I don't know when that was, 1989 or something, called Communion, I read that book, and I was so open at the time. I was going through this shamanic initiation in the hinterland canyons of Sedona and Arizona here, all over northern Arizona, Hopi Land and so forth, with a friend, and I was really opening up. So when I started reading this book by Whitley Strieber, the little gray guys started coming in my room. And my wife at the time was away in Europe for a few months. And so I was just me at the house, and the gray guys would start coming in through the walls. And my gut feeling was, no, thank you. I don't want any part of the lab experiment or using my semen for propagating a hybrid species. But I asked God, Source, I call it God. I had no programming against the word God, so to me it's not offensive in any way. If it is to use a different word, oneness, the Tao, so forth. And I said, leave. No, I don't give my permission for you to come in my room, or certainly not to transport me anywhere onto your ships for any kind of, disseminatory activities. And they left. But then I also became very curious, so I asked God, what is this? Who are these guys? And what's Whitley Strieber experiencing? And back then, this would have been 1989, they gave me a download, or God did, Source did, whatever, my own higher self did, and showed me that these are mostly, so you can't make a blanket statement. There's many type of grays as well. There's not just one. And when people say, well, are the aliens good or bad? I go, well, are humans good or bad? Or what are humans like? It's a huge spectrum of variety. There's good Dracos, bad Dracos, good Nordics, bad Nordics. It's the whole thing, the game of, and it's also perspective, what do you believe in? So we decide what's good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil, all that. And they showed me that this particular race of grays had left, they're humans, descendants of us humans, that have gone off on a timeline. This is 1989, so 30 years ago almost, right? That I'm shown this. And in my opinion, it's proven not to be true. I had never heard of it. I was in my 20s, like, wow, okay, interesting. They showed me that part of us humans at this time, with genetic experimentation, the Human Genome Project, starting to play with genetics, humans have decided that sex and emotions create all the trouble, some of us. So we've decided to get rid of our sexuality and just become mental, stuck in our heads, super brainiacs. So the gray guys, and there's some of them that are not human. There are just protoplasmic biobots, or whatever they call them, programmed life forms, PLFs. But some are descendants of ours. Well, they go off in about 1 billion years, roughly, and end up in a star system. They're able to go into the fourth dimension. They can create craft that can go to the fourth dimension, but not higher than that. In the fifth dimension, you need some heart, or you need, it's a long story. So they end up in a Zeta Reticuli, which is an apropos name, the end of the reticulatum, the end of the road. And they can no longer propagate. They can't propagate because they've lost sexuality, viability. I have to plug in my phone here. They've lost their viability. It's like you breed too much, the dogs go bad, and it's too much cloning. It's not good. It doesn't retain hybrid vigor. And so they're dying out. They've blown up planets. Some of them are nihilistic and want to die out. Others then reach out across the past, billions of years back to this time, where it is the inception point for that timeline for them on Earth, and they say we want to come back to the organic timeline that they dimly remember in their past. And with infinite succor and providence, providence, the source creator offers them, sure, come on back here when it all started, roughly, the time of the atom bomb, and start reclaiming some genetic material. Therefore, the abductions, where they take sperm and implant others and they grow hybrid babies, which is ample evidence for. Look up Rachel in Nevada, ET, if you want to hear a real story. And I go, wow. And I can feel the love of Source, God, Father, Mother, the Tao, offering this portal back into organically reacquainting themselves with their emotions. They see they've bred their emotions out of them and the sexuality out of them. It's almost like insect clone mind, ant people, the greys, right? And they're run by the mantis. There's a big story. There's multiple types of greys, of course. But anyway, so I go, wow, that makes sense. And so they're allowed to come back. And here's the kicker. Most of the time, again, it's not hardcore black and white. Most of the time, they are abducting themselves or in their ancient family line by soul agreement. Very, very few abductions are against anybody's will. As soon as I said, I'm not part of this, I don't want to be part of it, they had to go away. Now, you may not be aware of it, so please don't get angry at me if you've been abducted and go, oh, that's totally against my will, Tobias. Well, do you know all your souls? Do you know all your personal lives? Do you know all the other aspects of yourself? If you're consciously in touch with it and you tell me that, I'll believe you. But if you're not, there's probably parts of you that you're not aware of. So they're actually abducting themselves, borrowing their own genetic material to rebuild hybrids to eventually be able to still create viable bodies. Long story. I was told that in 1989. I still believe that's true. That's what's happening. That's what's coming out more and more. So in the UFO field, the nuts and bolts crowd versus the experiencers is the divided and conquered place. So this has often played out with people that have, like this, the one with the children in Zimbabwe, a bunch of young kids, I don't know how small, they're in a grade school. They saw these ships land, but only the kids saw them do it. So, and the beings came out of the ships. It's happened in South America also, where they've landed in school with school children and communed with them, communicated with them. Yeah. And so all this, over the years, the last 30 years, I've been following it off and on, but I always felt that's so fucking nerdy. The UFO field is so nerdy and whatever. And it all has its right place. This is not about better and worse. See, that's what I'm going to try to point out here. Allow the Tao. It's all one circle, and it's all part of the game. But so recently, yes, cosmic disclosure, somebody mentioned, yes. Over the years, I've watched that. I've liked David Wilcock stuff, and I've been interested in a few people because I want to see how they fare trying to tell truth in a big public arena. So there's been a couple of people lately that I follow, like David Wilcock, and there's a doctor I like, Dr. Richard Bartlett. He was doing big projects. We're actually moving in the quantum fields, actually doing it, not yakking about it. See, this is rationalism, yak about it. Ivory tower mentalism versus trying to embody it. So people that are trying to do something a little cutting edge come across my radar Spirit says, pay attention to this guy for my own edification, or just to see how they fare, how it's working, what the collective is ready for, this kind of type of stuff. So yes, Wilcock I like a lot. But I also know he's a little, Lord Fauntleroy. Just like me, I totally relate. Like you start telling, I'm being Mr. Scientific today, but I can be a total little child, right? And that, can you tell that openly, that honestly, and sort of go into these arenas, and how does that work? Because we're trying to break down this old paradigm of scientism versus spirituality, an old Galilean dichotomy of the church versus science, that Neil deGrasse is totally still fighting. Oh, name to name. He's like so angry that on Christmas Day he points to the picture of an asshole of a dog in the shape of Jesus. On Christmas Day. Is there a little latent rage there against the church shutting down Galileo? I would say so. Right? So this Exactly. So what I'm interested in now, the dialectic of fighting each other to the death, and we, whether it's science versus religionism, witnessed by the quote skeptics. What's that guy named? I forget his name. Chris Nye, the science guy, Neil deGrasse, and there's another guy who runs Skeptic magazine, and there's so much anger and hatred at spirituality at the old Catholic Church. Understandable. I totally understand. I came from that place myself, right? It's ridiculous, superstition and all that. But so we throw half of ourselves away. We throw the emotional, intuitive, the spiritual, the yeah, Michael Shermer, that guy, right? If you watched him recently on the Joe Rogan show, I'm going to name some names today, where he was talking to Graham Hancock, who I really like, good friends of mine, are personal close friends with them, and I've gone and done ayahuasca ceremonies with them, with Graham Hancock, and I loved his stuff. And Graham, of course, way ahead with trying to show a realer history on Earth. And then you have people like Michael Sherman just dismissively, derisively, you know, laughing derisively, the taunting and making fun of the giggle factor of Hancock. And so if you watch, I recommend that one. Watch Graham Hancock and Joe Rogan. Stick it a little bit back at Michael Shermer because he's been so arrogant all these years. So there's a balancing that's going to happen here. Now, this is happening within the UFO field. All right, I'll name some names. So Corey Goode, of course, talking about the 20 and back, the secret space program, the blue avians, the blue spheres, all this stuff, right? Comes on the scene a while back. And then the tail of that, then it's Emmett Smith. And I like all those guys. Vibrationally, I like them. I like Richard Dolan. I love his rationalism, his trying to, okay, let's not fly off into space, into La La Land, right? That's what he's trying to do. And then there's others that, anyway, you'll see it everywhere. Daniel List with, what's he call himself? The dark journalist, right? And then Bill from Avalon, who used to be with Carrie Cassidy, right? You can't avoid this shit if you're in the my world. You watch it through the years. So I guess I've retained a lot of the history. So there's always this division, right? We get divided and conquered. And it's needed. You need to have Richard Dolan versus Corey Goode, which is happening right now because Corey Goode's trying to trademark SSP or the Sphere Being Alliance or something like that, which is obviously ridiculous. You can't trademark basic phrases like that, right? But so this experiencer versus nuts and bolts, this battle, yeah, Project Camelot with Carrie Cassidy, pioneering work, unbelievably good, loved them. But you notice her and Bill, her partner, they broke up, and he went off to have to do his own Project Avalon, and he was super angry at Corey Goode when he first came out. And so there's going to be two camps happening here. One is Corey is just a total charlatan, and he just data mined Project Avalon for all the info, then created his own thing. And this is a disinfo campaign by our government trying to make, because the basic disinfo, by the way, I love Richard Dolan's false flag stuff, right? His stuff on Gaia TV. If you ever want to know about false flags and really, really wake up, beautifully done, probably the best scholarly done ever on how false flags work, from the Reichstag with Hitler to 9/11 to all the others that have been done. You know, he does a beautiful job. And this is about not taking sides. But I just want to, if I can do a little bit, elucidate, point out that for those of us that don't want to be caught in the us versus them, it's like that old Mad magazine. Remember those two guys, spy versus spy, the white spy and the black spy, right? That's like, it's ridiculous. Mad magazine's going, we're always fighting. They're exactly the same. They're just one's all wearing black and one's all in white. And they're always blowing each other up, right? Total ego, right? It's perfect. Well, that's what we're doing. So you can see the ego in Richard Dolan, in my opinion, when he's gloating about, all right, now finally Corey Goode has been exposed as a charlatan and I'm going to be turned out to be correct. That's ego. And like Jimmy Church says, God bless him, love Jimmy, he's in the middle of it, so it'll be an interesting wake-up call for him. And then you have James Gilliland sitting up there in ESETI going, all right, now finally some of the shit's going to hit the fan, right? But we're all in ego about our side to be right. How is that different than Democrats and blood publicans right now? It's not. It's the same ego that wants to be right. I would suggest, for those of us, the very few, like Eckhart Tolle says, the very few that are interested in unity. And just today, this is what's prompting my video today. Grant Cameron, who my friend, I'm not naming his name because he's kind of out of the field right now, but who used to run the MUFON, one of the largest MUFON chapters in the country, introduced me to Grant Cameron. And when I first watched Grant Cameron, I'll put a link to the video I saw. It's called Tales of Unity, which I really loved. I said, oh, he's just another nuts and bolts guy all stuck in his head and all that. And I've had enough of that for a while, so I didn't really want to watch it. But today I see a Grant Cameron video of him talking about Tales of Unity, where he describes his process of being a total nuts and bolts guy for 30 years, FOIA requests, Reagan libraries, all this stuff, Eisenhower, all this, But finally he has his own experience, a download, where he realizes the whole thing about frequency and vibration. You can float bodies through the wall, and it's not just about the nuts and bolts. Beautiful for my heart to see him evolving into a little bit of both. A little bit of both. Nuts and bolts. Keep it grounded. Get real. Don't go off into la la land. Start cults in the mountains. Right? Which happens. Right? There's someone channeling the Zetas a few years ago. Fucking nutsoid. In my opinion. So it can get really weird. The New Age deceptions and all that crapola, of course. You watch out for that. And you learn the hard way either way. If you stay just in mentalism, rationalism, scientism, you hit a dead end. Because, so someone like a Richard Dolan, in my opinion, I've never met you, Richard. You seem like a reasonable, a very balanced point of view. Again, I'm trying, this is what I say in the beginning of this video, I'm entering dangerous territory here, right? But for those of you that want to hear the unity place that I'm interested in, or just enjoy the game with malice toward none, and just agree to disagree and agree that it's the two grinding wheels working it out. But when Dolan says, well, you just not feel with your heart and your intuition, like he rejects that completely. In my opinion, that's rejecting half of your brain, half of your being, half of your spirit, your soul. But also going off into only that and rejecting your rationalism, rejecting science, that is equally unbalanced. So as we're trying to create unity, you're going to have these two camps: scientism or rationalism, mentalism, Descartes, or reductionism, right? Mechanistic materialism versus intuition and feeling and sense, all that. But we need both, and that's what I'm interested in. The full spectrum human, which is not, we don't cut the first three chakras off, the lower three chakras. You don't reject them, which has happened mostly in Western science. That's why people have all colon problems and prostate problems and intestinal problems, right? Because we're not feeding that part of his energy. But it's equally unbalanced to just be an earth person, where you're just totally into your lower part of your body and you don't do your third eye and your crown and your throat, right? And in the middle is the heart that's caught in the middle. Jesus, we string Jesus on the cross. Literally, he's the heart. He's in the middle of the body. He's the one chakra in the middle, 3 above and 3 below. And the twain have not met, east versus west, divided, right? All that. So that's happening in the UFO field right now, witnessed by the battle. Now, whether Corey Goode is a disinfo agent, unknowingly, if he is, it's unknowing in my idea. Watching the latest thing, I'm telling all of it today, why not? So watching the Jason Rice show up as the clone insider for Cosmic Disclosure, where Jay Widener is keeping it going on Gaia TV, in my opinion, I have to agree with Jordan Sather that says, come on, that feels totally manufactured. I mean, come on, when he said Johann, it's a total copy of Corey Goode's stuff. It is. So learning to discern this is a huge thing. And the one thing that has worked in my life, growing up the way I did with my father and all his scientist egghead friends, and they were, my dad would tell me, yeah, I sat next to Edward Teller at this time. And later I realized, Dad, you have no idea what Edward Teller was really about. The shit he did with Bob Lazar type stuff, Area 51. That's compartmentalized, right? My dad was enamored of it, but he knew enough intuitively, my father, when they tried to seduce him into working for warfare stuff, he said, I will never do that. And I read later the Akashic records. I had a download about Atlantis, him, my dad, and I having multiple lifetimes together because I've been into a personal healing journey. I could see how he was part of those guys that strung the crystals too high in Atlantis and sank the continent. They were enamored by this super science coming in from Mars, Maldek, Mars, etc. My dad got seduced by that. It was a harsh lesson to sink the continent of the place you love to realize I fucking have to learn to balance my heart. I don't know how much of this is going to make sense. But so this dichotomy of the nuts and bolts versus experiencers will continue. Right? And I love them. I can feel them both. We need Richard Dolan, but we need some experiencers too. You know, the real experiencers. Paola Harris lately, God bless her. You know, very honest in my opinion, talking about going through a Stargate portal. Going straight through a Stargate portal up in Shasta. That's a real story. Look it up. Paola Harris, Stargate portal, Shasta. So, and of course, James Gilliland's work at ESETI, this is actual contact with the other dimensions, right? And ships, but the ships aren't solid physically. Some are, but most aren't. These are plasma, etheric consciousness ships. I was shown this early on too. Back at that same time, going through a huge awakening, I had 2 direct encounters with my friend, shaman friend, who we had 2 daytime encounters, full-on daytime encounters with ships. One was with star family, like humans, just like us, maybe from the Pleiades, but it felt more Nordic to me. Full-on conscious, undeniable. We both looked at each other. Now, he's had it happen a lot more than me, but I was just waking up to it. Later, we had another one that felt more like a probe, like one that was scanning us, and they weren't, quote, the good guys. But that was just my perspective. So I've had 2 direct personal experiences. And then I've been taken into the other realms, into the 4, 5, 6D, several times also. Sitting on ships, feeling how the walls are alive, living walls. Now that really fucks up, screws with the nuts and bolts people. The ship's alive. There's no dials. You put your hands there. You merge with the ship. You become the ship. The ship is your larger body. That's why they can't start them up when they recover those craft, even if they're 3D material. They can't figure them out because there's no dials. There's no key to turn and start it up. So David Adair, check him out, talks about that. I like him because he was a young scientific whiz kid and he was taken in there. And he would touch the ship and the ship would talk to him. That doesn't fit with the nuts and bolts crowd. Now, ultimately, I joke about it or say, Jesus doesn't need a UFO. Yogananda doesn't need a UFO. Babaji doesn't need a UFO. Medicine Cloud, the Hopi medicine man that we work with, doesn't need a UFO. They are the UFO. It is their larger plasmic field body. It's like, why would you need a car if you can just go anywhere you want mentally through stargates and portals like Buddha and Krishna and so forth? You don't. But there's a sliding scale from all the way super heavy metal ships that the Nazis built with fucking gun turrets on it. I mean, that's as fucking crude as it can get, right? So you have this whole spectrum, nuts and bolts, from ridiculous gun turrets on Nazi ships when they're working with the Dracos during World War II, to complete plasma spiritual ships. And then there's 100 or 1,000 different levels of that in between. It's never just black and white. So you have the nuts and bolts crowd on Earth playing out versus the experiencers, kind of like that. Trying to, can we talk to each other? Can we start come together right now over me, right? Can you do that? So I really like Grant Cameron's story. Just watched it. I'll link it. Tales of Unity, where he tells his story, and then he's starting to wake up to, there's a spiritual aspect to this. And for the spiritual aspect people, we tend to be a little bit more open and less dismissive and less angry about it, The rationalists tend to be more ego caught, in my opinion. The Shermers, or if Dolan is looking at Corey Good, he'll be more angry at Corey because he's fucking up the rationalistic principle of how we should research these things. So it's a little more angry. The rationalist scientist, witnessed by again Neil deGrasse posting the asshole of a dog that looks like Jesus on Christmas Day. That's latent, basically super angry ego. Let's just be honest. So we have to talk to each other. But this battle of nuts and bolts versus experiencers is coming to a little bit of a head. And then also with the, what do they call themselves? To the Stars Academy, TTSI or something, TTSA. Come on, those guys are obviously ex-CIA and all that, right? So that's coming in there with Tom DeLonge. So the basic polarity on Earth is between upper chakra and lower chakra people. Now, there's planets around the galaxy where we all just live with people just like us, right? When you have homogenized people in Sweden, like where I came from, oh, it's all good. But as soon as you get a bunch of immigrants in there, oh, fuck, they're starting to stir up their lower three chakras, or the first three chakras, the foundational stuff. And so we're trying to do that on a larger level on Earth, where Earth is a galactic experiment about trying to create a full spectrum human, a new God type, a new human for the galaxy, a new galactic human. And this will be seen everywhere as this bipolar polarity fighting. But like I said in the video a few years ago, God doesn't take sides. The Tao doesn't take sides. It's on everyone's side. Tales of unity in consciousness. That's what we're trying to do. So for those of you that are interested in unity and consciousness within embodying it within yourself and not see, it's right for people to have sides and play that out. But there's going to be an increasing, maybe 10-15% right now of people on Earth are kind of tired of sinking continents or having World War I, World War II, or divorces and divorce lawyers and fighting and battles in the street and Antifas versus right wing and so forth. A bunch of us are tired of it. So that's my intention with my heart, to be the heart in the middle here that can the upper chakra, my dad and the super scientists that we used to hang out with, versus the lower chakra, let's play bass, let's fucking get down, let's do this, right? Right? Can we somehow mix that together, three gather, four gather, all of us together? Yes. But there's going to be a long and drawn out battle, has been, of people learning this mostly the hard way by hitting the wall. So in the UFO field, the current battle of nuts and bolts people, now the experiencers will go, yeah, they're nuts, and they're bolted to the ground. They're not very open, right? And the nuts and bolt people go, you guys are airy-fairy. You're losing it. You're la-la land. Really? Yeah? You're talking to blue chickens? Are you fucking serious? This is off the chart, right? I heard someone call them blue chickens. And for Corey Good, right? So it's a really interesting time. Experiencers versus nuts and bolts people in the UFO field. Are these two ever going to be able to get along? Because all that scuttlebutt, I hear some of it behind the scenes of how everybody talks and he's such an egomaniac, or David Wilcock is such an egomaniac, or, so-and-so and this and that. And then so it's all of that drama, trauma, and karma, the little patent place, goes on in every field. Every field. And academicians, and John Anthony West, God bless him, who was a beautiful Egypt researcher, used to call them quackademicians, and I always liked that because I was almost caught in it myself, right? And I didn't get caught in it, so I had to distance myself from it. So anyway, that's some of my view on the current battle in the disclosure field. And then, Dr. Greer, you shouldn't leave him out. He's a big influence, Just look at him. Come on. Is he half ET himself or what? And all this is going to be revealed, like all these influences. There's we are the ETs. I know I'm from Arcturus. I know I've lived in many other lifetimes in spaceships and this and that and the other. I've experienced it. I've had an experience where I'm in two places at once and I'm on another planet. I have a family there, right? I mean, but when you're stuck in your head, The rationalists cannot, because it triggers them energetically. The biggest people are going to have the hardest time with spiritual disclosure, although I think Richard Dolan will make it because he's open-minded enough. He's doing a job. He's doing the right job. Someone needs to keep it real and grounded, right? But religious people and scientists are going to have the hardest time with disclosure because it's going to rock their worlds. But we're all going to get rocked too when the other things get revealed in this age of revelation, shocking things that have been going on behind the scenes, whether it's the pedophilia thing or whatever. That's going to rock the collective. So at this time, it's a very finely calibrated giant disclosure happening in all fields. Personal disclosure, I'm going through it daily. It's terrifying for us. We can talk about it, but to experience it is different. Listen to Paola Harris talking about her actually meeting this 9-foot ET, humanoid, through a portal up at Mount Shasta. That's very different than reading and writing and researching about it. It's the experience, that's when it rocks your world. So the experiencers and the rationalists are terrified of experience. They won't say that. Oh no, I'm ready. But when it happens, I've watched them multiple times, they just literally go unconscious. I watched it with Dr. Richard Bartlett. When we would move into the quantum field, people would just fall on the stage. They just pass out. They black out. Because there's a switch in our brains. We do it all the time right now. There's multiple dimensions happening right now exactly where you are. But we filter it all out. And if it starts coming through our walls, we think we're schizophrenic. So we're going to have to do a gentle awakening process, a gentle revelation, a gentle disclosure. And luckily, God, the Tao, the source, our souls are in charge of this, not our egos and our minds that are always playing macho about, oh, I'm ready for it. Sure, but I'd ship land on the White House lawn. You're not ready. And luckily, they know better than you. It's called macho spiritualism or macho egoism, where we think we're ready. So, if you're interested in unity, full spectrum human, with heart, which I suggest will be a lot more helpful and we won't create World War III and don't fall for the false flag disclosure stuff, right? So much love. If you're interested in this type of vibration, in the vibration of not taking sides, of not being caught and divided and conquered, and having the revealing of all these things that have kept us caught on Earth and locked in this prison planet dimension for a long time, if you're interested in coming out of that and willing to do some of the personal work, you may think about joining us for the webcasts on Sundays tomorrow, tobiaslars.com, the webcast. So, and I recommend starting with the innerbodyawakening.com. I am working on, hello Duncan, if you see it, he's doing the work. I'm doing the inspirational, I'll do the video editing of the one full conscious breath. Teach a very simple ancient yogic technique that will help you stay connected to the 0 points in your chakras and get into unity consciousness experientially. All right, much love. All right, that was a longer one than normal, but I could go on for we could do 3 days on this stuff. So is there a way to see this current battle of polarity and divided in consciousness? That stuff, if you stay in your body and your mind, all your chakras running, you want your engine running on all 12 chakras, 144 and 9, but the 7 inside your body for sure. So that you can't get fooled again. Thank you, St. Pete Townsend. We get on our knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Much love. Talk to you later.